Okay, let's unpack this cultural institution. We are talking about the vast, eternally yellow world of Springfield, USA, and of course, the show that has really redefined American comedy for decades, The Simpsons.
It is genuinely hard to overstate the scale here. The source material we have is just immense. We're looking at a show that holds the record for the longest-running American animated series.
And the longest-running American sitcom, period, live action or animated.
Right, and the longest-running American scripted primetime television series. It's not just a TV show, it's, a foundational pillar of modern media.
Exactly. And our exploration today is really going to use that history, that endurance, as our guide. We're going to examine its very rushed origins, the complex mechanics that keep it all running.
And the production drama, which is significant, plus the major controversies that sort of track how our society has changed over the last 30-plus years.
Our whole mission here is to give you a complete picture of how this thing was built, how it survives, and what it represents culturally.
And just the initial facts are, well, they're breathtaking. Many people think of its official debut on December 17th, 1989. But it was already a known thing by then.
Right. It had already been on the air for years.
For 3 full seasons of animated shorts on The Tracey Ullman Show, starting all the way back on April 19th, 1987, it was an overnight success that was, almost 3 years in the making.
And the episode count just keeps going up. Our sources list it at nearly 800. I think the specific number is 798 episodes.
Which is just staggering to think about.
And for the Fox Broadcasting Company, you have to understand the strategic importance of this show. This was their anchor. It was Fox's first series ever to land in the top 30 ratings in its debut season.
It absolutely put the network on the map.
It did. And it was recognized almost instantly, not just as a ratings hit, but as a critical darling.
The list of awards is just massive. 37 Primetime Emmy Awards, 34 Annie Awards, and 2 Peabody Awards. It secured its place as a cultural benchmark very, very early.
I mean, if you want the definitive statement on its legacy, just remember that Time magazine called it the best television series of the entire 20th century.
Which is just an extraordinary claim for what is, at its heart, a cartoon.
So let's start at the very beginning. To understand that success, we have to look at the almost legendary story of its creation, which was really driven by panic.
It was. The show was brought to life by Matt Groening and then developed with James L. Brooks and Sam Simon, who were, absolute television veterans.
But the actual process of creation, it wasn't meticulous at all.
No. The story's just fantastic. Groening gets called in by Brooks to pitch a series of animated shorts for The Tracey Ullman Show.
And his plan was to pitch his existing comic strip, Life in Hell, which was already successful.
Exactly. But as he's sitting in the lobby waiting for the meeting, he has this sudden realization, this moment of panic.
He realizes that if he animates his established characters,
he might lose the publication rights to his life's work.
So on the fly, just minutes before walking into that pitch meeting, he scrambles. He formulates a brand new concept.
A deeply dysfunctional American family. He based the core family, Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie, on his own family members.
But he swapped his own name out for Bart.
Right, and Bart was chosen specifically, our sources note, because it's an anagram for brat, and the last name Simpson was picked because it sounded like simpleton.
It immediately sets up the whole comedic premise. A simple, average American family.
And that haste, that panic, it also dictated the initial look of the show. The first shorts are famously crude.
Very crude. Groening just submitted these basic, quickly drawn sketches, and he assumed that professional animators would clean them up and refine them.
But they didn't. The animators basically just retraced his rough drawings, and that locked in that slightly off-kilter, non-polished style we all know now.
Which brings us to maybe the most iconic visual element of all, the yellow skin.
And this wasn't even Groening's idea. It was the decision of the colorist, Georgie Kovacs-Paluch.
What was her thinking there?
Well, she noticed that some characters, like Bart, Lisa, and Maggie, they didn't have defined hairlines. And she felt that if they were just given a standard flesh color, they would look strange, almost sickly.
So yellow was the alternative.
Yeah.
An unnatural, vibrant choice.
And Groening loved it immediately. He found the absurdity of it hilarious. The source quotes him thinking, "Marge is yellow with blue hair. That's hilarious."
And it worked. That one decision made them completely distinct. It set them apart from everything else in animation.
So now let's shift from the family to their home, the fictional town of Springfield. This is just as vital to the show's success, mainly because it's so deliberately vague.
Right. Groening intentionally never named a specific state for its location.
And that choice, that intentional evasiveness, is absolutely key to the show's longevity. It gives the writers complete freedom.
Springfield's geography is just famously inconsistent.
It is. Depending on what a specific joke needs, the town can have coastlines, vast deserts, huge mountains, sometimes all in the same season.
Groening did eventually say he named it after Springfield, Oregon, which is near where he grew up in Portland.
And there are some little nods, like street names, that are direct connections to Portland. But the show has always maintained that ambiguity. That lack of a fixed location means it can comment on any part of the American experience.
And that intentional inconsistency, it extends to the very physics of the world itself, the famous floating timeline.
Which is really the mechanism that makes this infinite storytelling possible.
How does it work exactly?
The Simpsons operates on this timeline where even though holidays and birthdays pass every year, the core characters never, ever age. Episodes are always set in the year they're produced.
So it's in this constant state of narrative paradox.
It is, and the contradictions become really striking when you look at the flashbacks. Early episodes from the 90s, like The Way We Was, showed Homer and Marge as high schoolers in the 1970s.
So in that timeline, they would have had Bart in the early 1980s, which made sense at the time.
Exactly. But then decades later, the writers wanted to comment on a different era. So the 2008 episode, that 90s show, just completely retcons their history.
And suddenly they're a childless couple during the grunge era of the 1990s.
And then it gets pushed even further. A 2021 episode, Do Pizza Bots Dream of Electric Guitars, puts Homer's adolescence into that same 1990s period.
If they aged in real time, the whole show would have just imploded. The source material points out that by 2015, Bart would have actually been older than Homer was when the show first started.
So the creators just have to embrace the impossibility of it. That floating timeline is the only thing that keeps Homer and Marge in their 30s and Bart eternally 10.
And that same flexibility applies to character continuity.
Which is notoriously loose. Krusty the Clown can be this literate, savvy businessman in one episode.
And then in the next, he can't even read a simple sign.
Right. The needs of the joke always override past characterization.
But some things do stay fixed for emotional weight.
Yes. Things like Krusty's Jewish heritage, his rabbi father, his career starting in the 1960s. Those are kept consistent.
And that's where the timeline gets tangled up.
That's where the snags appear. If Krusty started his career in the 60s, and Grandpa Simpson served in World War II, and Principal Skinner was in Vietnam, their current ages make that history impossible.
So the audience just has to accept that the emotional backstory is fixed, but their physical age is not. It's a really remarkable balancing act.
Speaking of fixed elements, there's one really important non-continuity rule that's been there almost from the beginning.
The Treehouse of Horror episodes.
The annual Halloween special. Starting in season 2, they're explicitly non-canon. That allows the writers to, kill off main characters or send them into these wild supernatural situations without any consequences for the main show.
The only exception to that rule about death is when characters die in a regular canonical episode.
Right. Characters like Maud Flanders or Edna Krabappel, they remain dead. It's a sign of respect for the permanent nature of their passing in the story.
But then you have a character like Hans Moleman.
A beloved recurring character who, as of 2019, had been killed 26 separate times, only to show up perfectly healthy in the next episode. It's just a perfect example of their surreal comedy.
Okay, so let's move from the world of Springfield to the engine room. The behind-the-scenes world of writing, production, and critically, the financial battles that have defined the show.
The leadership structure has always been pretty complex. Matt Groening and James L. Brooks have always been the executive producers, but the most hands-on role is the showrunner.
And that person rotates every few seasons. They're the head writer and production manager, and they really set the tone for an entire season's worth of episodes.
And here we have to talk about Sam Simon. He was the creative supervisor for the first 4 seasons, which were so crucial.
The source calls him the unsung hero. He was really instrumental in shaping that early, witty, character-driven tone.
He was, but the sources are also very clear that he was constantly at odds with Groening, Brooks, and the production company.
What was the nature of that conflict?
It was fundamentally about creative control versus business. Simon was a stickler for story logic, for character consistency. He clashed with the more freewheeling approach of Groening and Brooks, especially when it came to things like merchandising.
So that friction eventually led to his departure in 1993.
It did, but the deal he negotiated before he left is legendary in television.
He secured a guaranteed share of the profits every single year, plus an executive producer credit, even though he never worked on the show again.
And that arrangement lasted until his death in 2015. It just shows how incredibly valuable that early creative input was considered to be.
Now, the writing room itself is famous. The process takes about 6 months to produce a single episode.
Which is an extremely long time in television. And that lag is exactly why the show has a hard time commenting on really immediate current events.
How does it work?
New writing teams, usually about 16 writers, meet every December to pitch ideas. Once the script is drafted, it goes through this demanding group rewrite phase, a punch-up.
Where the entire staff sits around a table and just works on the script together, adding jokes, reworking lines.
Exactly. George Meyer, who was active in those sessions until 2004, was notoriously good at this. He would often come up with the funniest lines, even if another writer got the official credit. That collaboration is what gave the early seasons that density of jokes.
And you have some incredible individual talent in that room. John Swartzwelder is the most prolific writer, with 60 episodes to his name.
His very distinct, often surreal humor really helped define that golden age.
And the writing room was a launch pad for other big careers.
Yeah.
Most famously, Conan O'Brien wrote for the show in the early 90s before he made that huge leap to late-night television.
And they would occasionally bring in outside talent. Ricky Gervais was the first celebrity to both write and guest star in an episode. Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg also wrote an episode.
And as union labor, the writers have participated in industry-wide strikes.
Yes, with the Writers Guild of America, East. They went on strike in late 2007 and then again more recently in May of 2023. These actions really highlight the value and the demanding nature of their work.
And those labor issues bring us directly to the core voice cast, whose contract negotiations became some of the most dramatic, highly publicized events in television history.
The main cast is just 6 incredible talents: Dan Castellaneta, Julie Kavner, Nancy Cartwright, Yeardley Smith, Hank Azaria, and Harry Shearer.
Well, between those 6 people, they voice almost every single character in Springfield.
Pretty much. Castellaneta is Homer, Grandpa, Krusty, Barney, and Kavner is Marge, Patty, and Selma. Both came over from the Tracy Ullman Show.
And Nancy Cartwright, who voices Bart, has that great story where she originally went in to audition for Lisa.
But she found Bart, described in the source as devious, underachieving, school-hating, irreverent, and clever, just far more interesting. She was cast on the spot.
Yeardley Smith, as Lisa, is the only main cast member who really only voices that one core character.
While Azaria and Shearer cover that huge cast of secondary characters. Moe, Chief Wiggum, Mr. Burns, Flanders, Skinner, the list goes on.
It's interesting that Fox initially tried to keep the actors' identities a secret.
They did. They held closed recording sessions. It was partly to keep costs down and partly to maintain the magic of the characters. That lasted until the episode Old Money, when the network finally revealed their roles.
And that recognition immediately led to these high-stakes financial disputes.
Before 1998, the main 6 actors were paid $30,000 per episode, which is respectable, but pretty low for a show that was becoming a global phenomenon.
So this is where the financial drama really becomes a central part of the show's story. By 1998, the show's making huge amounts of money in syndication for Fox.
And the actors demand significantly more. A major pay dispute breaks out, and the network plays hardball. They threaten to replace the entire cast.
A very serious public standoff.
It was. The conflict was resolved, but the price was huge. The actors got a massive raise to $125,000 per episode. It clearly established just how valuable they were.
But that wasn't the end of it. By 2004, the show's global revenue is even bigger, and the cast wants another raise. They asked for $360,000 per episode.
And they went on strike. They refused to show up for script readings.
That strike only lasted a month, but it worked. It pushed their pay to somewhere between $250,000 and $360,000 per episode.
This trend just continued. The next negotiation was in 2008. The actors wanted a bump towards $500,000 an episode.
And they settled at $400,000. For anyone listening, what this shows is that fundamental tension between the network, which sees the show as a machine,
and the actors, who are the irreplaceable heart of that machine.
But the show's longevity eventually forced a reality check. By 2011, Fox claimed production costs were just unsustainable.
They gave the cast a blunt ultimatum: take a drastic pay cut or the show is canceled immediately.
So to save the series, the cast agreed to a 30% pay cut, which brought their salaries down to just over $300,000 an episode.
which is a huge financial sacrifice, but it was made to preserve the institution. It's just remarkable how many times the show's future hinged entirely on those contract talks.
Now let's turn to the creative framework, the elements that anchor every episode and define its rhythm.
Well, the opening sequence is just instantly recognizable all over the world. The theme music by Danny Elfman, he's noted it's the single most popular piece of music he's ever written.
It's the audio signature of American satire.
And the opening has had 3 major versions over the years, including a new one when the show switched to high definition in 2009.
But within that structure, you have the 3 elements that famously change every week.
Bart's chalkboard sentence, Lisa's saxophone solo, and the celebrated couch gag. It keeps it fresh.
We mentioned the Treehouse of Horror episodes, the Halloween tradition. Those give the writers a chance to play with genres like horror and sci-fi that wouldn't work in the regular show.
Exactly. It's an outlet for dark humor and non-serious violence. When we talk about the show's humor, though, the density is what's really key.
It relied so heavily on cultural references from, well, everywhere. Movies, literature, music, history, science.
It's designed to appeal to multiple generations at once. A kid might laugh at Homer's slapstick, while a parent catches a subtle reference to a 1950s movie.
And then there's that whole other layer of comedy, the sight gags.
The animators are encouraged to add jokes in the background on signs or newspapers. They're so quick you often have to pause your screen to even catch them. It rewards really active viewing.
In the early days, one of the most consistent gags was Bart's prank calls to Moe's Tavern.
Right. Bart asks for a gag name, Moe yells it out, realizes he's been pranked, and then makes a violent threat.
And the origin of that is fascinating. It's based on a real series of prank calls called the Tube Bar Recordings.
Yes, featuring a real bartender named Louis Red Deutsch, whose real-life, profane responses inspired Moe's character. But the writers eventually dropped the calls as a regular joke after season 4.
Why was that?
They said it just became too hard to keep inventing new fake names and new angry responses from Moe.
The humor is also very self-referential. They often poke fun at their own network, Fox.
Constantly. There's a cited example in She Used to Be My Girl, where a Fox News van drives by with a Bush Cheney 2004 banner playing "We Are the Champions." That self-awareness is part of the brand.
It's impossible to really analyze the show's legacy without talking about its impact on the English language itself. It's been a factory for idioms and catchphrases.
And Homer's annoyed grunt, "do," is the gold standard.
It's so integrated into the culture that it's actually in the Oxford English Dictionary.
It is, though, without the apostrophe. Dan Castellaneta, Homer's voice actor, borrowed the sound from an actor in Laurel and Hardy comedies, and the producers shortened it to that quick, frustrated grunt we all know.
But it's more than just dough. The show popularized so many other terms. Groundskeeper Willie's description of the French as cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
That actually gained real political use. In 2003, during the lead-up to the Iraq War, a political columnist used that exact phrase to describe France's opposition. It shows how deep the show's language had penetrated.
And then you have the words they just invented, neologisms.
Words like cromulent and embiggen from the episode Lisa the Iconoclast. Embiggen has since shown up in actual scientific journals. The dismissive word meh was popularized by the show and added to the Collins English Dictionary in 2008. The list is huge.
And finally, on this topic, we have to address the show's reputation for predicting the future. This has become a huge thing online.
It has. The sources confirm this notoriety. The most famous example is from the episode Bart to the Future, which aired in 2000.
16 years before the 2016 election, it mentions Donald Trump having been president and leaving the country broke.
Another incredible example is from When You Dish Upon a Star. 19 years before it happened, it had a joke about 20th Century Fox being owned by Disney.
Other so-called predictions include smartwatches, video chat, Richard Branson's spaceflight, Lady Gaga's Super Bowl show.
But it's really crucial to get the creator's perspective here. They firmly deny any literal ability to predict the future.
They call them educated guesses.
Exactly. Showrunner Al Jean said that if you have a show running this long and you throw enough darts, you're going to get some bullseyes.
And fact-checkers often debunk these claims. The smartwatch was really based on the Apple Newton, a real device from 1993.
So what looks like prophecy is often just well-informed satire reacting to current trends. The writers are just very good at guessing where American culture is headed.
Okay, shifting to some heavier topics now. As a satire of middle-class American life, the show has always waded into controversial areas.
And that has, inevitably generated a lot of public criticism. Thematic analysis shows it has a consistently progressive satirical leaning. Authority figures, politicians, police, corporate executives are usually shown as corrupt or incompetent.
There's a consistent theme that government and big corporations are evil entities that take advantage of the common worker.
And one of the earliest big criticisms was aimed directly at Bart Simpson. He was targeted as a terrible role model for kids.
His motto was underachiever and proud of it.
Right. And this quickly went from just critical opinion to the national political stage. In 1992, President George H.W. Bush made that famous statement. He said he wanted American families to be a lot more like the Waltons and a lot less like the Simpsons.
Which put the show right in the middle of the culture wars.
And the writers responded immediately. They rushed out a short segment that aired just 3 days later, with Bart saying, "Hey, we're just like the Waltons. We're praying for an end to the Depression, too."
That quick, sharp response really cemented the show's image as an irreverent social commentator.
But the most serious and enduring controversy of the modern era is about representation, specifically the character of Apu Nahasa Pimapadalan.
This issue really came to a head after the 2017 documentary The Problem with Apu by Hari Kondabolu.
Kondabolu's argument was that Apu, voiced by a white actor, Hank Azaria, perpetuated harmful and racist stereotypes of Indian Americans for an entire generation.
And this sparked a massive debate about cultural appropriation and the responsibility of satire.
Initially, Matt Groening defended the characters, saying it was just the nature of cartooning and that people love to pretend they're offended.
The show itself addressed it in a 2018 episode where Lisa says, "Something that started decades ago and was applauded and inoffensive is now politically incorrect. What can you do?"
But the pressure, both internal and external, eventually led to a major change. Hank Azaria confirmed in February 2020 that he would step aside from voicing the role.
And that individual decision led to a much broader institutional policy change. In June 2020, after the Black Lives Matter protests, Fox announced that recurring characters of color would no longer be voiced by white actors.
And we see the results of that now. Carl Carlson, a black character originally voiced by Azaria, is now voiced by Alex Desire. Bumblebee Man is now voiced by Eric Lopez.
And Dr. Hibbert, originally voiced by Harry Shearer, is now voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. It represents a huge evolution for the show over its long run.
Beyond domestic issues, the show has also caused international outrage. The sources cite Bert versus Australia in 1995 and Blame It on Lisa in 2002.
The Blame It on Lisa episode, where the family goes to Rio de Janeiro, was particularly intense.
It was. Rio's tourist board threatened legal action because the city was shown as being overrun with street crime, kidnappings, and rats. It caused genuine diplomatic friction.
And there have been internal creative controversies, too. Matt Groening himself fiercely criticized the 1995 crossover episode with the critic, A Star is Burns.
He felt it was just an advertisement for another show and that it violated the integrity of the Simpsons universe. He was so angry he had his name taken off the credits.
Which led to a public spat with James L. Brooks.
It did. But for the hardcore fan base, maybe the most enduring creative controversy is the 1997 episode, The Principal and the Pauper.
This is the episode that revealed Principal Skinner was actually an imposter named Armin Tamzarian.
It completely erased years of character development, his Vietnam service, his relationship with his mother. All of it was revealed to be a lie. The outrage was huge.
Even Harry Shearer, who voices Skinner, was furious.
He said it was disrespectful to the audience's emotional investment in the character. He called it gratuitous, sacrificing character integrity for a cheap gag. That willingness to just throw out character history became a hallmark of that late 90s shift.
Despite all the controversies and the drama, the show has achieved this unprecedented status just through its sheer run length. It's a story of record-breaking endurance.
It started setting records early. In 1997, it surpassed The Flintstones as the longest-running primetime animated series.
Then in 2004, it passed The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet as the longest-running sitcom, by years on the air.
But the biggest milestone in American television came in 2009. It surpassed Gunsmoke to become the longest-running American scripted primetime series by number of seasons.
And then, in 2018, it surpassed Gunsmoke again for the total number of episodes. It set a benchmark that may never be broken.
And yet, alongside that incredible longevity is this relentless, continuous debate over the show's quality.
An argument that has basically defined its run since the late 1990s.
Critical opinion is usually split into eras. The early seasons through the mid-90s are almost universally seen as the golden age. They were praised for being intelligent, satirical, and emotionally grounded.
But by the late 90s, around season 9, criticism started to emerge about a perceived decline in quality.
The main complaint was that the show was moving away from character-driven plots and toward just zany antics, absurd stories, and too many celebrity cameos.
This criticism often focuses on Mike Scully's time as showrunner from seasons 9 to 12.
Right. One critic famously wrote that under Scully, the show just became a cartoon, losing that emotional weight. Scully himself once joked that the only way to last this long is by lowering your quality standards.
Al Jean, who was showrunner for an incredibly long time from seasons 13 to 33, also faced a lot of criticism.
Former writers said the show was on autopilot and had become too sentimental. But Jean made a good counterpoint. He said he remembers people claiming the show was going downhill as early as season 2.
Which suggests that perception of a decline is often just tied to nostalgia.
And it's also just difficult. After 2 decades, how do you maintain surprise? Homer's outrageous behavior, which was once shocking, just became expected. The plots had to get zanier to keep people engaged.
But there is a counter-narrative. Critics have pointed to later episodes as proof that the show is still capable of quality television.
And more recently, as late as mid-2023, some analyses suggest that with seasons 33 and 34, the show might be having a massive comeback or becoming good again.
Regardless of the critical debate, its commercial success ensures it just keeps going. It's financially unassailable.
It's consistently renewed in multi-season deals. Seasons 35 and 36 were confirmed in early 2023.
And more recently, in April 2025, a huge mega deal with Disney renewed the show for 4 more seasons.
Which means it will keep airing through the 2028-2029 season, which will be the show's 40th anniversary. It just speaks volumes about the value of that property.
And the franchise isn't just on TV. The first movie, the Simpsons movie, was a big commercial success in 2007.
And our source confirms that a sequel, The Simpsons 2, is officially set for release on July 23, 2027. The investment in this franchise is clearly massive and ongoing.
As we wrap up this examination, what really stands out is the incredibly complex balancing act required to maintain something of this size for 4 decades.
Absolutely. We've looked at the challenge of the floating timeline, which requires this constant paradox to even function. We've talked about the high-stakes voice actor disputes that nearly ended the show multiple times.
And we've detailed that profound cultural shift, from defending crude cartooning to making institutional policy changes on diverse voice casting.
The show is an anomaly. It's a satire machine that successfully became an industry behemoth, generating billions from merchandising and just maintaining this institutional comfort through massive deals.
And yet, what's maybe most fascinating is that this institutional comfort hasn't completely stopped creative experimentation.
No, even deep into its 4th decade, the production team is still introducing new ideas. They bring on high-profile guest animators or create exclusive content for Disney+.
So that final tension between the commercial need to just keep running smoothly and that creative drive to evolve and adapt and sometimes risk alienating your audience, that's the paradox that ensures Springfield Against All Odds just keeps on spinning.
It's a phenomenal run, truly unlike anything else in television history.
A story of enduring success through constant negotiation and adaptation. Thanks for listening.